Hello and welcome to another Hot Pixel Productions video tutorial. My name is Gerald Bellina, and in this particular tutorial what we're going to do is we are going to bring together two separate exposures of the same scene shot at exactly the same time. We're going to bring these into Photoshop and we are going to blend them together into one composite image with a different approach to masking this time. If you've been following me along in the two previous videos that I put up about this, in the first one we just learnt the basics of layer masks. In the second one we took it a little stage further in looking at the role adjustment layers can play, also used in conjunction with masking. In this video what we're going to do is we're going to look at a slightly more advanced way of creating very, very detailed masks from the channels within the actual Photoshop document, i.e. the RGB channels, the red, green and blue channels. Now if this is all sounding ridiculously unfamiliar to you, don't worry, we're going to go through it very, very slowly and methodically. So as I say, as you can see, I'm actually in Adobe Bridge here, and what I can do in Adobe Bridge, if you're not in Adobe Bridge, you're using Lightroom, or you don't have either of those things, don't worry, I'm going to show you how we can open this up as two separate documents and then bring one document into the other. But if you are in Lightroom, or as I say, I'm in Bridge, I can select both these images, I can come up underneath Tools, can come down to Photoshop and go Load Files into Photoshop Layers. Cool, it looks like it's done that. Now I need to be able to see our layers palette to check this out. So again, I'm not assuming that when you're opening up Photoshop you're going to have the layers palette visible. So we'll just get that by going up under Window and selecting Layers. And yes, you can see what Photoshop has automatically done is create two layers, and it's placed one right bang on top of the other, and actually in the stacking order I want as well. I want the dark one above the lighter one. But let me just close this down. Now if you're in Lightroom you do also have the ability to do that. I don't really know Lightroom very well, I don't really have a need for it right now, but I know that you can select open files in Photoshop Layers from Lightroom. Now if you don't, as I say, if you don't have either of those, let me just shut this down and show you how you can get two separate documents into one. So I'm not going to save that because we're going to do it this way. I'm just going to leave Bridge there, and I'm actually just going to bring up this. Now this would be the two separate folders, files in a folder on my desktop or somewhere on my computer, wherever you've got them hidden. And I'm just going to shift click on both and double click, and these are now going to open up as two separate documents. Here's my dark one, here's my light one. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to bring my dark one in and drop it in directly over my light one here. And in order to do that, I'm just going to go into the dark one. I'm just going to, on my keyboard, I'm going to type Command, I think on the PC that would be Control, Command A. It'll bring up our marching ants bounding box, as I mentioned in our first video. I told you these were going to be recurring an awful lot as we progress through this course. And here they are. And what I'm going to do is now press Command or Control C to copy that stage. I'm going to hop back in our light file, and I'm just going to go Command or Control V, and it's going to drop it in right over the top. And what I'm going to be able to do now with this this layer now in place, I'm going to come over here to the little eyeball icon, and I'm going to toggle that on and off so we can see that has brought it in. Now here's a very important thing. If you are going to do this, even though I was on a tripod that was built by the same guys that did Stonehenge, I mean it was a big solid one, you cannot legislate for any slightest small shift, whether it's been from a breeze, you've really accidentally just brushed the camera, and there's been a tiny shift or movement. It could be for any reason, it could be just like changing focal length, whatever. So what we need to do is we need to make sure that these are absolutely as aligned, as crisply and sharply as possible. Photoshop's going to take care of that for us. So what I need to do is just shift click on both layers so they're both selected. I'm going to come up under Edit, down to Auto Align Layers. When I do that, Photoshop's going to give me some options in how I want it to try and analyze this image and reposition stuff. Basically, I would say 99% of the time, just let it do it automatically. Let it figure it out in auto mode. So I'm going to let it do that. It's going to think about it, and it's going to start aligning these images. Now, let's see. Yeah, you know what? If you can see let me just zoom in here. You can see the little checkerboard line down here. That's because Photoshop has had to shift it almost by a pixel, either to the left or the right, to get that in exact absolute alignment. So let me just zoom out of that again. Yep, so it's definitely worth doing. Now what you can do is, let's select our crop tool, and I'm just going to come up to the right corner here. Command Option Shift is going to perfectly constrain that, just to bring the edges in so we can hide that bounding box where it's shifted and realigned the image. And I'm just going to double click on this to accept that crop. And there we have it. Now, hopefully, these should now be perfectly aligned without any kind of bounding box edges. So we can now begin the process of creating a custom mask to be able to blend this sky into this foreground. Right, now if you've been following along from the first two previous tutorials that I created, we would have probably, in order to do this, what I would probably have done would be to have instantiated or created a layer mask to attach to this darker image on the uppermost layer. And I would have done that by going just down to this little rectangle with a hole in it and just created a as I say, layer mask to attach to that, and then I would have gone to invert it to hide it. And again, you know, this I'm clicking on Command I or Control I on my keyboard, you know, to hide and reveal it with, again, the mantra. And hopefully you're really starting to get your head around this, so I'm not going to have to keep repeating this too much longer. That you know, white reveals, black conceals. So white will let this darker image show on the stage and on the canvas, and by hiding it through inverting it, we can actually hide it, actually just revealing the layer below. So I think we've got that, okay? And what I would have probably done here, again, would have come over and selected a brush, made sure that my foreground was set to white, so that means that the brush is loaded with white. I would check my opacity. Right now the opacity is set to 50%, so this is loaded with 50% white, which is okay. And then with the layer mask selected, and I know it's selected because it would have these square brackets around all four corners, as opposed to if I was actually to mistakenly paint on the actual image. I don't want to do that. So as I say, I want to be painting on the layer. I'll be painting on the layer with white and starting to reveal that darker exposed sky, allowing that to show through the mask, which is, you know, all well and good, and that we won't do it. Now, this is a great way to do it, but sometimes it can get very hard to, again, no matter how careful you are, is to stop overspill into the foreground. As I say, when you're doing this kind of multi-exposure blend, one of the challenges is always to get a really good smooth transition between, as I say, the sky and the horizon and then the foreground. So again, a lot of times that can be quite tricky. You may need it, there's no question. You may need to be able to adjust very, very gently. Otherwise it can kind of look really, really weird. If you've got these kind of really light horizon hills against a very dark sky, that can kind of look pretty phony. But anyway, this is really more of an exercise to show you a different way, a different approach to masking that could be termed as quite a little bit more advanced, but nonetheless I think is easily doable. And I'm always under the premise of it, look, if I can do anything, trust me, you can do it. And I think I can do this pretty well. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to control click on this layer mask to delete. So delete layer mask, I'm going to get rid of that. Now, what I'm going to do now is I'm going to bring up a new palette that we've not seen before. I'm going to come up into Windows, and I'm going to bring up a channels palette, and I'll explain briefly what this is about. I don't want to go into too much detail about exactly, you know, the science and everything about, you know, the red, green and blue channel. There are plenty of videos out there that will be able to tell this. But firstly, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to select this, and I'm going to butt this up against the layers palette, so I get that little blue line appearing, and let go, and that's how I can co-join. these two together. So anyway, so let's take a look at what we've got here. I'm now going to hide this darker one, so that we're going to be focusing on the lighter exposure in terms of the channels here. Now, if I click on the red channel, basically what this is showing me is the channel, the red channel, in a monochromatic representation of its lightness and darkness values. As I say, that's pretty technical, and to be quite honest, that's all I really want to say about it right now. It's just showing us a monochromatic representation of the lights and darks along the red channel. As I say, we've got an RGB file here, red, green and blue. If I click on the green one, just toggle between the two, you can see there's slightly different reinterpretation of the lights and darks just for that green channel. And consequently, if I just click on the blue channel, you will see a kind of a different kind of hue in terms of the blacks and the greys and the midtones. Now, when these three come together as one complete composite, they produce our full RGB image. Now, remembering our mantra of white revealing, black concealing, we can actually create a mask from any one of these channels to best suit our objective here, because, as I say, white reveals, black conceals. Now, what I want to look for within these three channels, I want to look for the one that's going to give me the best black and white contrast between the foreground and the sky. Red's not bad. Grey is a little bit wishy-washy through here. It's kind of a little bit too grey for my liking. Red, same thing. Now, if I click on the blue, yeah, it's kind of definitely over here. Here again, it's a little bit kind of, as I say, wishy-washy. And the sky, well, we don't really need to worry about this. But I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to opt to use the blue channel here to create a custom mask to be able to mask out either the sky or the foreground. And this is how I'm going to go about doing it. There's a couple of ways you can go about doing it. The first way, what you can do is you can click, hold down and drag this channel down over to this icon next to the trash can, which will duplicate it, and it's come up as a blue copy. Now let me undo this and just show you another way. If you control click on it, you get the opportunity to duplicate the channel. It's just exactly what we've done. We're dropping it on the copy layer icon at the bottom, but when you release this, you actually do get an additional dialog box that comes up, and it's a prompt to name it as something, which is great. Okay, let's go ahead and do that. So let's name this sky, and we'll click OK, and we'll just click on it. Actually, what will we do? Yes, we will now click on it. So we're now clicking and hide. This is what's active. It's our sky. Now, what I want to do, I want to create much greater contrast between the sky and this horizon line. Now, what I'm now going to do, in order to do that, I'm going to come up under Image. I'm going to come down to Adjustments, and and I'm going to bring up a Curves property. Okay, right now I'm going to start playing around with the black point of this curve and the white point of this curve, and you're going to kind of see what's going to start to happen. I'm going to start dragging this across, and this is going to start targeting all the blacks and really start to bring them down. I'm going to bring it to about there. I'm going to do the same thing with my white point and bring that over to the left, thus blowing out or strengthening all the whites to the point where we almost get a pure black and white representation of that channel mask. Now, hopefully you can kind of see where we're heading with this. Now, we could now use this as a custom mask to be able to, again, white reveals, black conceals. Now, what I want to do here is I just want to very, very quickly and gently paint out make sure there's no grey still left in the sky. So I'm just going to come up to my brush by clicking up here or pressing B on my keyboard. Making sure I've got white, I'm going to take the opacity all the way up to 100%. I'm just going to press the left square bracket key next to the P key just to bring that down in size. But what I'm now going to do is I'm going to come up to its mode, switch it from normal over to overlay. And I'm going to now start painting on the white areas of this potential channel. And even if I do start to go into the black, it does not target the blacks at all. It only targets the lights and the whites. It's almost like dodging and burning. It's actually almost just like dodging. It's using the dodge tool to be able to just burn away, but not affect any of the darks. If you get to this stage, you have created your very first custom channel mask, or a mask based on one of the red, green, or blue channels in the channels palette. Now, we have ourselves here a great sky mask. Let's now create a foreground mask based off of this sky mask. Very simple, same basic process, two ways of going about it. We either bring and drag it down and drop it onto this icon next to the trash can. I'll just do that, and we get sky copy. I'm just going to press Command Z or Control Z to undo that. So we do it the other way, whereby we just Control click and duplicate channel, and this I'm going to call foreground. And we're very, very simply going to turn it into a foreground mask simply by pressing Command or Control I to invert it. And there we are. We have the exact mirror representation of our sky mask, and now it's a foreground mask. So if we were to change, I don't know, brought up levels and wanted to darken down this foreground, it would, but it would not affect the sky in any way because it would be being masked out here. Right, so let's see how we can bring this into action in terms of them helping us with our challenge or our objective of blending this darker sky into this lighter foreground. And we're going to do it by using our custom made mask that we created. And this is how we're going to go about doing it. What we have to basically do is attach a layer mask to this uppermost dark layer. Now, as I showed you before, in order to do that, we would just come down here, and if we were to just click right now, we would, as I say, add a white transparent layer mask, which is not what we want. We actually do want this concealed. There's a quick way of doing that. Now I'm just going to press Command or Control Z on my keyboard to undo that. If you come down to this add layer mask icon here, and before clicking, just hold down the Option or Alt key, it will automatically create a black layer mask that will conceal this layer that it's attached to. Right, now, as I say, let us come back down to our channel palette and let us click on Sky. So toggle that on, there we go, let's have a Sky guy. Now, what we want to do here is we want to make a selection of this white area, and in order to do that, there are two ways we can do it. We can either come down again to our little icons at the bottom here, and down here right on the left, it seems to be like it looks like a very, very faint circle, which is it's indicating that it's the marching ants, which is probably why it's so mysterious and hard to see. But if you were to click on that, it would actually bring up our marching ants, and it would actually be selecting this white uppermost part of the mask. Well, again, that's from there to there. There is a quicker way of doing that. Now I'm going to press Command or Control D, as in Derek, on my keyboard, and that's to deselect the marching ants. That's to make them buzz off and go away and bother someone else. The quicker way of doing it is just to Command, I believe, or Command on a Mac, Command click or Control click on a PC, I believe. Just Command click on that actual mask layer, and that's another way that you can bring up the anthill mob, and we can begin to use this on our layer mask. Now, what we've got to basically do, in essence, is we've got to transfer this bounding box, these marching ants, over onto our mask, so we can now start painting with it. Basically, what happens with a selection, any selection, is that it will affect anything that's actually active that you've clicked on. So right here, I've actually just clicked on the dark sky bounding box here. Now, if I was to make any changes or do anything, it would affect this dark sky image, because this is what is selected, and now this is over. Quite simply, in order to have this bounding box affect this layer mask, you just have to click on it. Now, although you can't see it, this selection is now hovering over this layer mask. Now, what we may want to do here, although this is a much simpler mask, so you know it would be up to you, but if this was a more complicated mask, what you'd invariably want to do would be to hide, not deselect, hide the marching ants. Now, there's a couple of ways of doing this. First one's a little bit not particularly intuitive. You've got to come up under View and come down to Extras and just select Extras in terms of you're turning off. For some reason, the guys at Photoshop decided to call the marching ants Extras. Maybe because they couldn't fit marching ants or hide marching ants in this dialog box. Who knows? But anyway, as you can see, the key command for that is Command H, or I think it'd probably be Control H. And let me just do that again. Yeah. Command H, it will either hide or reveal the marching ants. It will not deselect them. Only Command D will deselect and make them go away. Command H will just make them invisible. They are still there, but they're invisible. Now, this is another very crucial thing that I'm sure anybody that's ever used these goddamn marching ants has done when they're going, is to always remember, it's not always easy, I've done it so many times, that once you've got them hidden, remember that you've got a selection, and try and remember to, after you finish whatever it is you've been doing, to deselect it. Otherwise, it's going to be selected there in the background, and you're going to try and start painting in other areas, or you're going to create another. Let me just show you. Let's say I want to create another, I don't know, a levels layer mask. You see, with those guys hidden, not knowing they're actually going to create a layer mask based on that selection, which is probably not what I wanted. I just wanted a plain white layer mask. Thank you very much. So I'm going to Command Z, undo that. Yeah, as I say. So I actually have deselected them by making that layer mask, which is okay. We can just go back to the channels again. But as I say, try wherever possible. Once you've hidden them and you've done what you're trying to do, make them visible again and just hit Command D to deselect them so you can move on and do whatever it is else you want to do next. But anyway, right. So here they are. They're back. So I'm going to make these affect or constrain just on this layer mask. Now with this mask or this selection over here, I'm going to go Command H. They're gone but not deselected. I'm going to come over, just the B key on my keyboard, no command, just straight B, or come over and say selecting my brush, foreground white, which means that this is now a white brush. Enlarge it a little bit. I'm going to come up and make my opacity of this brush 40% by tapping the number 4 key on my keyboard, and everything looking good, fingers crossed. I'm not going to be able to do anything because what I've done when we were painting on our layer mask, I had changed over the mode of the brush from normal to overlay. What a happy accident. So I can show you, because that's probably something else you might do. Well, I just did it, so there you go. Swapping my brush over to normal mode from overlay. Alright, second time lucky, here we go. Yes, success. Starting to paint 40% opacity over this layer mask, starting to gently reveal that darker exposure. Now let me just do a little experiment to just demonstrate, you know, the beauty obviously of having this selection going to be able to constrain this mask. I'm now going to make my brush 100% just for demonstration purposes, and I'm going to start painting into there. That's like the full dark. Okay, now I'm going to slip and come down into here. Any of this foreground is not being affected by that painting because it's being protected by our marching ants selection. Now, if you remember, if we just click on our channel mask, you remember that we did actually have some grayer portions of it that wasn't going to be as constraining as solid black. That's okay, but you can see that's what's allowed that brush to kind of just blend into those top little ridges there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring up my history, because this is how you can go back in time in Photoshop. Command Z, Control Z only gives you one step back, and once you've taken that one step back, you do it again, you're going to come back to where you are. So it, as I say, Photoshop works a little differently to other Adobe Creative Suite products like Illustrator or InDesign, where you can have up to 30, 40, 50 undos, and all you do is just bang away at Command Z or Control Z, Control Z to get back in time to where you wanted to, you know, you'd made a mistake or something. Well, this certainly was a big mistake. I'm going to go all the way back here to the stage where I was at when it was just load selection, and we're going to start again. I'm going to start 40%, bringing this back in, and I'm going to start blending this over. Blending this back in. Can be a little bit more aggressive up here, but I really want to start to take care as I start to approach the horizon line. In fact, what I may do is I may drop down to 10% on my brush. Looks like I may have missed a little bit of a pixel there when I cropped it. So I'm going to hit 1 on my keyboard, change the opacity of my brush to 10%. I'm now going to start tapping on the left square bracket key next to the P key on my keyboard, just to reduce the radius of this brush, and again, very gently start bringing in the sky. I don't mind it bleeding over into these little tops of these. You might need it actually to make it a little bit more convincing. That'll be okay for now. I'm not trying to dismiss it, but as I say, I mean, I'm sure you've got better things to do than sit here watching me tiddle around with that. So, in essence, let's just toggle this on and off and see what we got. You know, not bad. So, let's just recap in terms of what we did here. We made a selection from this layer mask here. We superimposed it over this layer mask. We hid the selection, and we just went on regularly as we would do with any other layer masking process in terms of trying to blend this darker exposure back so it will sit down and sit comfortably in this image as a whole. And again, let's just toggle on and off. So there you go, there you have it. So now that we've achieved our optimal blend, with blending this darker exposure with this lighter exposure, where does one go from here? Well, obviously this isn't the end, this is really pretty much more the beginning, in terms of we now just have, as I say, a well-balanced image with which to begin the process of further enhancement, masking, etc., etc. Now, in order to do that, what we would have to do is actually create one complete composite layer of these two layers, i.e. join or bring these two layers together, as I say, into one complete composite. So here's how we can do it. If you shift click on both layers to select them, holding down the Option key, or on the PC the Alt key, I believe. Now I have the Option key depressed and pressed. I'm going to come up to this top right hand corner, to this drop down menu, and I'm going to come down to Merge Visible. As I say, I've already got the Option key pressed down, and then I'm going to release that. And with that Option key modifier held down, instead of merging visible, it does merge visible, but it actually creates a complete composite of these two layers together. So if I return these off, there you have the complete merged image. So let me just undo that. Well, actually, let me just go back to where we were. And this is the other way of doing it. And this is a little bit more tortuous, as you're going to need two hands for this because of the keyboard modifiers in order to achieve basically the same thing. You need to press down. Let's take it from here. Going in Command, Option, Shift. Yep, 3 fingers involved here. Command, Option, Shift on the Mac. Then hit the E key, and that gives you your stamped composite layer up here. So as I say, Command, Option, Shift, and as I say, you need 2 hands for that, unless you're Harry Houdini. Okay, so either way, that's the way you produce a composite layer from the 2 layers beneath. Now, what a lot of people like to do at this juncture is to click Shift on these 2 layers and then go Command G. And what that actually does, that kind of puts them into a little folder or a group. If you just toggle the right arrow off here, you can see that those are tucked away in there. And then you can just proceed to add your additional adjustment layers and really get cracking and working in on this composite image. Obviously, you could double click on that, and let's say we'll call this blend And as I say, you can then toggle that off, or as I say, get back to there if ever you're just not happy with it, or you need to just get back to where you originally were, because you want to make further adjustments, or you want to start again with this blend. So you can just stick it, as I say, in a little group there. Now I'm going to come back to where we began, because to be quite honest, this is what I will do. This is what I would do, because already, I mean, I've now got two 16-bit 300 dpi images, one on top of the other, and even before I've kind of got started with any further adjustments, I'm already up to nearly 600 megabytes, and with the addition of other layers, other masks, etc, etc, this is going to be up to nearly 1 gigabyte in no time. So I really want to keep the file size down to a minimum. So what I would do at this juncture would be to just save this as whatever I've saved this file as. And I've actually saved this as rond out blended, because this is the rond out valley, and this is the blended version with these two layers intact. With this saved in this state, I would actually just go up here to this menu and actually flatten this image, and then go up to File, Save As, and save it as a different document. So I would actually just now save this as rond out merged, and that's going to save, and this is now going to be the document I will use as my basis to start on, knowing that I've still got the rond out blended document with those two layers with the blend in place that I could, if necessary, go back to. And now, as I say, I mean, I've now just brought the file size down from the 600 megabytes to just around about 240. I'm not saying that's particularly small, but that's going to give me a little bit more breathing space in terms of moving forward with the development of this image. So there you have it. Quite a long video this time, but I think it was worth taking the time to go through this methodically and learning the ability to be able to create custom masks from a particular channel within the channel palette. And hopefully, this has given you a new concept or new ideas to be able to take and adopt to your own image processing and the creation of custom masks for your images. I'm going to leave it here for now, say goodbye, and catch you on the next go round. And thanks for watching.